Thanks for joining us on this final session of our study on the BeAttitudes, the 8 statements of Jesus that he made about the blessings of the kingdom of heaven. And this final Beatitude, I think, is probably the most unique of all the Beatitudes. And it's unique for a couple of very specific reasons. First, I think it's unique because out of all of the Beatitudes, this is the one that, if we're honest, most of us would like to avoid. In fact, I think most of us would spend an enormous amount of energy trying to avoid this beatitude rather than pursue it. And the second reason I think this is unique is because this is the only beatitude of all the 8 that Jesus gives any additional commentary to after he speaks it. You know, when you think about the first 7 beatitudes, Jesus just speaks them and goes on to the next. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, they'll be comforted. Blessed are the meek, they'll inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, they'll be satisfied. Blessed are the merciful, they'll be shown mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, they'll see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they'll be called sons of God. And then Jesus gets to this last beatitude, and when he speaks it, he immediately adds 2 more verses of additional commentary explaining why this beatitude has this particular blessing. And the reason he does that, I think, is because Jesus understands that our tendency will be to avoid this beatitude altogether. But when we understand it and embrace it and step into it, there's great reward for experiencing it. Here's what Jesus said. Matthew chapter 5, verse 10. Blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. And here's the additional commentary. Blessed are you when others revile you and persecute you and utter all kinds of evil against you falsely on my account. Rejoice and be glad, for great is your reward in heaven, for so they persecuted the prophets who were before you. Again, it's a very interesting, unique beatitude. And here's another interesting thing about this final one. It ends with the same blessing as the first. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you when you are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for yours is the kingdom of heaven. So why are they the same blessing? Well, let me just say, I don't think it's because Jesus did something random. If you know anything about Jesus, and I've said this many times, Jesus doesn't do random. I don't think Jesus was teaching these 8 Beatitudes. He gets to the last one, and as he's sharing it, all of a sudden he thinks, oh no, I don't have an 8th blessing to give. Why don't I just give the same as the first, right? That's not what's happening here. I think the reason he gives the same blessing is because they are intimately intertwined. Because what does it mean to be poor in spirit? You know, to be poor in spirit requires an awareness of our sin, that we are spiritually bankrupt, and that we need God to restore, renew, forgive, and save us from our sin. And when he does that and we step into the kingdom of heaven, we are made righteous before God. And then we're called to pursue the righteous life, or these other beatitudes, as we've talked about them. But the fact is, when you step into the kingdom of heaven and really begin to pursue it and to grab a hold of righteousness, you will be persecuted for righteousness' sake. Because the world and sin and the kingdom of heaven and righteousness will never go together. They'll never mesh. They'll never perfectly align. In fact, Paul said it this way to Timothy in one of his letters to him. In 2 Timothy chapter 3, Paul says, indeed, all who desire to live a godly life in Christ Jesus will be persecuted. Now, I don't know about you, but that's kind of depressing. If I'm going to try to live a godly life, the Bible guarantees that at some point I'm going to be persecuted for it. You just can't get around it. But as depressing as that might sound, there's actually a reason why. In the verses above that statement, Paul begins to talk about the worldly approach to life, and that sin in the world will always pursue being lovers of ourselves, that our sinful nature will pursue being lovers of money and wealth, that being part of the world and pursuing the world will cause us to be proud and arrogant and ungrateful and unholy and unappeasable, heartless and slanderous and conceited, he says. And then he ends with this phrase. He says, actually, you'll become a lover of pleasure rather than a lover of God. And so when someone who is part of the kingdom of heaven and pursuing righteousness tries their best to live righteously, you have to expect that that's not always going to be received well by the world. Righteousness and the worldliness of sin will never go together. They will never align themselves. And sometimes it will get to the point that the world will not just ignore you, but they will despise you, maybe even revile you and persecute you because of how ridiculous they feel that the pursuit of righteousness is. In fact, I would actually go so far as to say, if there has never been a moment in your life as a Christian where pursuing righteousness did not create some tension between you and the world, that you might not actually be fully pursuing the kingdom of heaven. You can't live righteously and live in the world and there never be a rub between those two. They will be in conflict. Righteousness and sin will never align. So here's Jesus' promise. His promise is that when the world speaks lies about you because of righteousness, or when the world speaks evil about you and tries to make you out to be the villain because of righteousness, if they despise your faith, and maybe even more, they despise you because of Jesus, the calling, the blessing, the promise of Jesus is be encouraged. Jesus says, because the same thing happened to the prophets that came before you, that when they pursued righteousness above all, the world did not always like it. Great is your reward. Be encouraged because it's not the first time. You are not alone. But even more than that, here's the blessing. The kingdom of heaven is yours. That if you're being persecuted for righteousness' sake, it's almost a confirmation that you actually are a follower of Jesus. But beyond that, be encouraged because the kingdom of heaven is your true kingdom. You're not of this world. Greater things than this await you in your pursuit of Christ. And so, as always, in this session, we've given some scriptures and some questions to spur on your discussion. And my hope is you'll have some great, really, dialogue about what it means to pursue righteousness above all things and why, as someone who's pursuing righteousness, we'll be persecuted at times and we can be okay with that. Not because we want to be, and that we also would not avoid the idea of suffering for the sake of the gospel. But we would just pursue living righteously above all else. Because the blessing of the kingdom is this, that when you're persecuted for righteousness' sake, yours is the kingdom of heaven.